enjoy the moment, make the most of it. Enjoy the moment because you only have that moment. You don't know what happens tomorrow. You might have an accident. You can't do ballet anymore. You don't know, do you? So make the most of it because you don't know what the future holds. You can't change what's happened before. So make the most of that process of doing it. I'm doing what I enjoy, and that's the most important thing.
Hey dancers, welcome to the show. I'm Julie and I'm your host today on this episode of Broche Banter. I both own and teach at Broche Ballet, a virtual ballet school just for adults. Join us as we explore all things adult ballet. Today on the show, I chat with Tom, who lives across the pond in the UK. He's always been fascinated with ballet, but only started dancing just a few years ago. Before that, he began his journey with mindfulness practice, which helped pull him out of a dark time. That led him to yoga and finally now to ballet. He now teaches both yoga and mindfulness, but enjoys ballet for the purity of the movement and strives to enjoy every step of the journey without getting caught up into goals. The process and living in the moment is really what brings the joy. Enjoy! Before we get to the show, let's take our Broche Bite. On this segment, we'll talk about bite-sized ballet tidbits to give you something to chew on while you listen. In this episode, Tom and I talk a lot about mindfulness practice, so let me provide a quick definition to give our conversation some context. The first definition of mindfulness means maintaining a moment-by-moment awareness of our thoughts, emotions, bodily sensations, and surrounding environment with openness and curiosity. Another definition is that mindfulness is a type of meditation in which you focus on being intensely aware of what you're sensing and feeling in the moment without interpretation or judgment. This is a really, really powerful tool to change your mind, and we have both come to find that it is incredibly helpful and beneficial. Now, on to the show. Just a quick note, if you are listening to this on the day it comes out, November 17th, 2020, there will be no episode next week. We'll be skipping Thanksgiving week. So we will see you again the first week of December. Welcome to the show, Tom. It's so great to be able to chat with you today on the podcast.
Yeah, it's great to be here. It's great for you to have me. I'm really chuffed.
So we've been Instagram followers of each other for a while, but we really kind of met during this whole lockdown situation when you joined the online studio back, March. Yeah. It was like early COVID. But I'm really excited to actually get to know your story because you do not only ballet, but you do yoga and also you're into mindfulness and meditation as well. So I'm fascinated to hear your story. So let's get into it.
Yeah. So, I actually did mindfulness, the three hobbies you mentioned. It was mindfulness that I did first. That was the first thing I came to. And I came to mindfulness because I had a nervous breakdown. I had a drink problem. And I was suffering with depression and I was suffering with anxiety. So I came to mindfulness through that as a way of treating it, as a form of treatment, really. But I got really into it. I did one 8-week workshop, which was like doing each weekend doing 2 days over 8 weeks to get the basic meditation. And then from there, having read a lot around the subject and done lots of other courses, workshops, I sort of I want movement because I was always quite sporty. I did a lot of running. I think you can see I've got a few trophies there. So I do a lot of stuff. So then from there, I sort of did yoga because I wanted something that was movement, but more meditative. And then from there, that took me to ballet because I liked stretching and but I wanted something more creative, more challenging. And I'd always liked it when I was younger. I'd flirted with it when I was younger, but not did it properly. So the three are sort of interlinked. So I went from one to the other, and now I do all three. So, and I think they all complement each other as well.
They definitely, I think I came to it backwards from you, where I started with ballet, and then that took me to yoga, and then that took me to mindfulness. But coming at it from those three perspectives, I can really see how ballet in and of itself is actually a meditative practice where you're trying to notice what's happening in your body. You're trying to notice it, accept it, be okay with it at the same time that you're trying to change it. I'm still very new to mindfulness, so please correct me if I'm wrong about what mindfulness is all about, but that is kind of how I see ballet and mindfulness super, super connected, that you want to just notice everything that happens in your body in order to be able to make changes to it and be able to kind of mold it to this world of ballet.
Yeah, it complements. Yeah, ballet is definitely sort of like mindful movement, because you're just thinking so much about the steps and the different, all the different things you've got to do. So your mind's on that, and you're moving, and you're not even thinking about the movement. So your mind's not off. It makes it very difficult for your mind to wander off and get taken downstream by all these negative thoughts. Do you know what I mean? Which is what meditation teaches you to do. But of course, if you're doing ballet, it has the same effect. I think you're almost doing it subconsciously. You're almost being mindful without realizing it. It forces you to be mindful, because if your mind wanders, you're not, you're off your game. You're forgetting which steps next. You forget. You're not concentrating on the alignment, your turnout, all the rest of it. So you can't afford to be daydreaming when you're doing it. Do you know what I mean? That's what mindfulness is, because when mindfulness, you let the thoughts go. You've got the thought stream. If you think of it as a stream of thought consciousness and thoughts going through your head, and you sort of going off in all these different directions, and then you can get taken downstream very quickly, and that can lead to anxiety and depression, because you're getting taken away with these thoughts. You can't do that when you're ballet. The two mesh really well, I think.
It's very true. It does have a very calming effect on the mind, and even for many of us dancers, if we are feeling depression or anxiety and we do ballet, it can actually help you kind of steer out of that and kind of calm your mind out of those kinds of thoughts as well.
Yeah, totally. It's interesting actually that nobody's really picked up on that more, because with mindfulness you can get things like, I've got various books like mindful running or Zen running or mindful drawing. Yoga and meditation clearly go together, but then you think, why someone could do mindful ballet? You could actually do that as something that maybe I should write a book on it. Maybe that's something I should do.
Yeah, it's fascinating. The more I get into mindfulness, I mean, it's only been about 3 months that I've been getting into it, but like what you're saying is so interesting, because if I had studied mindfulness earlier in my ballet training, I think I would have gotten farther faster, because I didn't know what I was trying to do with my mind. I think it was actually very easy to let the anxiety creep in, because when things are moving fast and you feel lost and there's a lot going on, it's easy to just overwhelm your mind with anxiety and just feel anxious about the speed of things and feel anxious that you're not getting it. But I think if I had studied mindfulness sooner, I mean, obviously it's good whenever you come to these things, but I think it would have helped a lot in the beginning of my ballet training to understand my mind and understand what was happening up there, and not just be like at the mercy of my mind.
Yes. Yeah. I think, as well, the other thing is, it doesn't really matter how you get there, does it? It's like you're all trying to get to the same place. You know what I mean? So it's all different paths to try to get to the same spot. And I think there is actually, it's funny. I remember being in therapy years ago, and my therapist said, I saw you dancing. I had a dream the other night and I saw you dancing, and I was like, and he directed me to do this thing called, I think it's called Four Rhythms. I don't know if they've got it in the States, but it's mindful dancing, and you sort of let yourself go, and that. And I didn't really fancy that. I wanted something more disciplined. But so there is mindful dancing out there, so it already exists, So, but I think having some discipline to it is a bit easier, because otherwise you just sort of like, you just sort of jump,
Right. And I think in some ways the problem is the lack of discipline, right? The problem with letting your mind wander down the dark holes is the lack of being able to kind of, it's not about controlling it, but about being able to accept it, and not just letting your mind wander and letting your mind get the best of you. It's like being there with it, but not just believing everything it says to you or getting swept up with your mind. So I think the discipline and the structure of ballet does help with that, of keeping yourself on track and keeping your mind focused.
Yeah, and I think a lot of athletes use mindfulness as well. So if you think it's going to be good for ballet, if tennis players are doing it, and you know football players are doing it, and track athletes are doing it, then why wouldn't you do it if you do ballet? Because it's a physical, it's the same thing. You've got to be an athlete to do it. Well, you don't have to be. I mean, if you're an amateur ballet, it doesn't be an outdoor athlete, but it's still an athletic pastime. So, like I know Joanna Conter, who's a tennis player, does every day and swears by it. So it'd be interesting if there were any ballet dancers that do meditation. Actually, I've not come across any, but I'm sure there are.
There probably are. It's just not as widely talked about in ballet, I think.
No.
So I'm curious on your thoughts on this because you know a lot about meditation and mindfulness, and we've talked about it a
Mm.
lot. So one of the things that I struggle with a lot in meditation and in mindfulness is this idea of like accepting the things that you're thinking and feeling at the same time as not necessarily deciding to keep them. So like one of the things that I'm like, obviously as dancers, we're often very ambitious. We want a lot of
Mm.
things. We want to get better. We want to be
Yeah.
better. We want to be farther. But at the same time, like accepting where you are while wanting to
Hmm.
be farther along in your journey seems very confusing to me as a concept. Like, how could I accept where I am while also wanting to be better at the same time? Can those two ideas live together? Do you know what does that make sense? It's a
Yeah.
confusing question.
Yeah. I think it's trying to get the balance between letting your not getting taken by the thoughts, but not pushing them away. So it's very if you push the thoughts away, like I don't want to think about that. That's not good because obviously that's creating that tension. Do you mean? And that's just those thoughts are just going to manifest in depression and anxiety later on. Um, so it's accepting any if you have any negative thoughts, it's kind of accepting them and saying, well, it's okay to think that, but I'm not going to be taken by that. So it's sort of having that balance between I accept the thoughts or I accept the feelings. It can be feelings as well. Accept the bad feelings coming from the thoughts, but I'm not going to let them take me over. So it just sort of like if I'm sad, for example. Well, if you're sad for a reason, if someone's died and I'm sad, or something didn't go well, if you're thinking about ballet, and your practice was awful, then that's okay. It's okay to feel like that. Sort of accept that. Feel sort of it's feeling those negative feelings sort of pass through you, and then just letting it go. Does. I mean, it's because when you do meditation, when you actually practice the meditation, you're letting you come back to the breath in mindfulness. So you're thinking about the breath, concentrating on the breath, and then the thoughts are coming in. You're not trying to stop them, but you're letting the thoughts go. So it's almost like you're a pebble in a stream, and the thoughts are just water, and they're just washing over you. It's not really affecting you. You're accepting that's part of the human condition. And if you keep doing that, you get to a point where you sort of think, if you keep practicing, if you practice meditation, like if you do 20 minutes a day, every day, let's say you do it for 6 weeks, after about 6 weeks, you'll hit a point where you'll put space between you and those thoughts. And when they come in, you'll be like, okay, that's just my brain doing what it does, doing those negative thoughts. And it's not a big, you just sort of let it go. And it's not a big deal. And you see more, it's just training yourself into that mindset. If that makes sense. I don't know. I'm hoping that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. So maybe another thing I've heard. So like obviously, I live on social media, right?
Yeah.
I'm there all the time, maintaining two brands on there, and you
Mm.
get a lot of positive comments and you get a lot of negative comments. Like you
Yeah.
just get a lot of comments, or you get a lot of feedback.
Yeah.
You're out there, you're interacting with people, and
Mm.
one thought I heard was that you shouldn't let either the positive thoughts or the negative thoughts affect you. You
Yeah.
should just see them as neutral comments, as like just not affecting you. You can't get wrapped up
Yeah.
in the positive ones or the negative ones. They're just comments, they're just thoughts, they're just things in the world. Is that kind of maybe what you're
Yeah.
talking about?
Yes. 100%. But I think also the key thing is the sort of emotional side of it, in that you can't not be emotional. Do you mean? So if something does upset you, it upsets you. If something makes you happy, it's happy, and that's okay. And it's not getting drawn into on an emotional level into that in a really intense way and getting taken downstream. Do you mean? It's just sort of accepting it but so not pushing it away, except in the human condition, if you like, but in a very a bit more disciplined way. So there's just sort of like, I'm happy or I'm sad, but it's not. I'm not going to go to the extreme. You know what I mean? When I don't need to. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, you're more level with it. So
Right.
and I think that's the key to it, is to not be so like. I find that if someone comments about someone on social media, and I think that's pretty negative, they don't like that. That's okay, but I'm not going to dwell on it. I'm just going to say, yeah, I'm not happy about that, and then I'll let the thought go. You know, I let the feelings go. It doesn't affect you as much.
So it's kind of like, in terms of, one thing that gets dancers down a lot, especially ballet dancers who tend to be of the perfectionist tendency, which I am as well, is like if you mess something up, it can really derail you for a while. If you and also if you do really great at something, you can let it derail you, but in a positive way. You can let it fly off the handle and kind of go into like a manic side of things on the other hand.
That's it. Yes.
Kind of like evening that out and just being like, all of this is part of the ballet training, the good, the bad, the ugly, the amazing. It's all just like part of it, and it's not anything to get hung up on in the process.
Yes. Yeah, because it's all about the process. I think like I always think like I've taken this more into my yoga practice than maybe ballet, but I always think like if you're doing yoga, so you're not, if you want to see all these crazy poses you want to do, you think, well, I will get there, but I don't need to worry about getting there. It's the process, because it's not about that. It's about the process of the breath and going through it. And so you can almost apply that to ballet. Like, you know, if you say I want to do like, I don't know, you're doing triple pirouettes extremely easily, then it's the process. I can just concentrate in the process, because I know if I work in the process and not get taken away by why can't I do it as well as that person? Why can't I be want to be? If I put the work into the process, that will take me there anyway. So that will take care of the ego. So I can just immerse myself in the process, and then that, by immersing yourself in the process, you're being mindful, because it's all about being in the moment. Because we don't have the past's gone and the future's yet to come. So we only have the moment. So it's only by immersing yourself in the process that you're going to get where you want to be, because that's all you've got. So that's the key to, and that I think works very well with ballet. Personally, that's why I think do it.
So when people say trust the process, this is what they're talking about.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think 100%. Because if you're dwelling on the past all the time, coulda, shoulda, woulda, should have done this, should have done it that way, could have done that, would have done that. That's the path to depression, because you're dwelling in the past. If you're thinking about the future, you're thinking, I need to be doing, I need to be able to do like, I don't know, I need to be able to do the splits 6 months from now perfectly, front and side. Then that's just going to create anxiety, because you don't know what the future holds. You're living in the future. You have to ground yourself in the present. And that's what mindfulness is all about. And that's why you ground yourself for the breath, because that's all you've got. You've only got the present. And so if you ground yourself in the process, then you're not worrying about what you did wrong or what you might do wrong in the future. You're just worrying about that, and that's all you've got. You can only work with this moment that we have right now, and then it's gone, and then you move on to the next moment. If that makes sense.
Absolutely. It's pretty, I'm like getting chills over here. It's like very intensely wise. It's a very, like, it makes a lot of sense. It's hard to implement. Do you still find this hard to maintain over time, or is it kind of easy now and natural now to maintain this focus?
The key is to have some sort of regular meditation practice. I had a regular meditation practice, and the more I practiced, the easier it got. I've let my practice slip because I'm doing a lot more yoga. So I'm getting a lot of what I needed from mindfulness from the yoga. But there's still things for meditation and mindfulness that I can't quite get in the yoga. So now I'm like thinking, particularly with the pandemic, I'm getting a bit anxious, and I'm getting a bit more, little mini bouts of depression. And, now I'm realizing actually I need to keep myself grounded in some sort of meditation practice, even if it's only 20 minutes every other day, because it gives me something I can't quite get anywhere else, So I think the key is just a meditative practice. It's kind of like if you don't practice ballet, it's no good saying, well, I've got the ballet brain now, so I'm always going to be good at ballet. You've still got to maintain, you've got to practice. You know what I mean? And it's the same as anything. You have to think of mindfulness as going to the gym. You know, if I want to maintain the fitness or the physical body I want, I have to work at it. And that's what meditation is almost like. It's like going to the gym for the brain. It's working the brain, practicing it so it processes and works in the best way it possibly can. And that's how you have to view it. You know, it's healthy body and mind.
Amazing. It's fascinating. It's once you start thinking of your brain as a muscle like everything else, I think it does help change the perspective as well. Like I
Yeah.
think it's easy to feel and think, or like feel the intensity of the thoughts coming through and think that you will be able to change them, or that they are their
Mm.
own entity, or that there's something that is just like kind of on its own. But then when you think about and start to actually be able to see changes in your mind, I think that can be helpful to start to understand your thoughts for what they are and that they're not like
Mm.
the boss of you.
Yeah, totally.
It's just fascinating how all of this relates to dancing. And, you know, I get the pandemic has been really hard on dancers. It's been really
Mm.
hard on everyone. I mean, but
Yes.
maintaining the consistency of practice, I think, has been an incredible challenge for people during this period of time. And I think it's challenging because the motivation has changed. The motivation is different in that there's often no motivation. I mean, there's no class to go to, there's no friends to go see. All of the external
Yeah.
motivators have been completely removed. And so the only reason to do it, the only reason to do it is if you love the process, or if you're willing to start loving it for the process of it. And I think that is actually a really challenging transition to make from a recreational hobby that you go and see your friends to do to like
Mm.
a serious meditative daily practice, whether or not you feel like doing it. I think that's a huge shift that people are starting to come around to understand.
Yes, totally. Yeah. I think I found that, you know, I went through, you know, I'm out of lockdown here. But the first couple of months of lockdown, I was all at sea, you know. But then I'm very lucky. I've got a lot of solitary activities that I've done before we came into that. Meditation being one, running being another, yoga being another. And of course, all I did was simply do those things and then integrate ballet into that as well. I went and got a ballet bar and I got on Zoom. I went on your class. And eventually I just got into that pattern of it just became another activity which I'd practice at home, like I would with my home yoga practice or something like that, and just immerse myself in it, as you say. And actually, it's made me better because it's given me a bit more discipline. It's made me realize how much I enjoy it. You know, oh, you can always get a few, I don't know, a few other items, get some new dance wear or something, and that'll keep you motivated, you know.
Yes, yes. And we always, you have a more extensive legging collection than I do actually, which is quite impressive because I have a lot of leggings, but I think you actually have more colors and patterns than I ever even knew existed in terms of leggings and tights.
Yeah. Yes, that's definitely a hobby. Definitely the other hobby. Yes.
So, okay, so when you got into all of this, what were you doing for work at that time, or were you still in school? What was like the beginning of all of this? Were you still working professionally somewhere when this all came into the side, or what was your life like pre all of this stuff?
Well, I was working in a pub, and I was drinking heavily. Um, and I had started doing, I had was also doing an architectural design and technology course degree, and I was doing a long commute. And that's probably when I went off, things went in a dark place because at the time, I'd not long broken my hand. And so I wasn't doing any exercise. So I used to do a lot of five-a-side soccer and surfing. To live on a coast, you got surfing. And that was sort of keeping me afloat. I couldn't do that because I broke my hand. And then when my hand healed up, it took a long time to heal. It wasn't very good. I was living in that lifestyle of going out and drinking a lot because I did a bar job. So lots of my friends worked in the industry, so they all loved to drink. Um, and when I did this architectural design technology course, what I realized is I was struggling because I realized how much I drank. And a combination of those things. And I got in a difficult relationship with someone who's a bit of a narcissist, a bit toxic. And all of those things came together, and I just crashed, completely crashed. I just couldn't handle it anymore. I lost the plot completely. And it took a long time then to sort of work through. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but that's where I was. So then I had to work through piecemeal all of the problems and try and break them down and deal with them individually. And the first one was the drink. I had to get rid of that. Then I had to deal with the depression, the anxiety, letting go of the toxic relationship. So all of these things I had to deal with them, and mindfulness is absolutely key in helping me get through that. There's other things I did AA, I went to psychotherapy, but mindfulness was the key ingredient, you know.
Definitely. I've definitely seen it have a very healing capacity for myself as well, going through this whole pandemic period of time. It's very helpful to be able to be with the negativity that you've experienced and felt, and make sure you come out of it learning good lessons, because I think it's very easy to come out of a traumatic situation learning negative lessons. Like, it's easy to come out of it saying all people are bad, or the world is scary, or like, it's easy to take negative lessons out of negative experiences. But I think mindfulness has really helped me be able to take positive lessons out of negative experiences and change it around, as opposed to just going into a dark place, because it would be very easy to go into a dark place when you have what feels like the entire world against you and in a really challenging situation.
Yeah, I think also that you has to be a note of caution as well with mindfulness, because a lot of it, like for example, snipers do mindfulness now. They actually train mindfulness meditation to concentrate when they're, so they can just sit there with a gun, concentrate for long periods of time. But there's a lot of stuff out there that's sort of taken a lot of the spirituality out of it, which is okay, but you don't want to water it down too much, because the danger is if it becomes too almost inhuman, it can make you leave you feeling a bit numb. And I've experienced this. So you need to do your homework, do your research on, like, if you're doing it. The teacher I did mindfulness with, she was actually doing a postgrad in Buddhism studies at the time. So she was coming at it from the Buddhist perspective. I'm not saying you have to be a Buddhist or anything like that, but she was still grounded in the spirituality of it. She hadn't sort of, sterilized it too much, that it was just like this. Because you have to be careful that, particularly in the corporate world, a lot of mindfulness is designed to sort of make us more compliant workers, and that can be a negative thing, because you can water it down too much. And there is an author who's got a book called Mindfulness, and I can't remember his name, but I'm just saying there needs to be, make sure you get the right type of mindfulness, the right type of, and I would recommend people like Thich Nhat Hanh, some of his books, which is this gentleman here, Thich Nhat Hanh. This is his one, which is about work. But I'd recommend his sort of stuff. You don't want to get too far away from it, because it can, there's a lot of charlatans out there. There's a lot of people now peddling mindfulness, who maybe don't know as much as they think they know. So you've got to be very careful, I think, as well. Just a note of caution, because it's brilliant. I think it's transformative. But you've got to try and make sure you don't get taken down the wrong path. That's just something I thought I'd throw in there.
So I can see basically that kind of mindfulness, or like the more negative kind of mindfulness, in the sense of trying to almost like numb yourself to the thought. So like, you don't want to get swept up in either the good or the bad, but you also want to make sure that you're still a part of the human condition, and not like trying to deny all of your emotions, or like push them out. Is that kind of what you're like? It's easy to get down the path of
kind of, but I think it's just like, for example, I did a meditation, which the basic meditation I did to learn was mindfulness of breathing. In mindfulness of breathing, you just concentrate on the breath, and that's what it's all about. Concentrate on the breath. That's to get you started. If you just keep doing that, that can actually be quite numbing, particularly if you do that, because some people meditate for a couple of hours at a time. But then there's a Tom Glenn meditation, which I do, which is another good one. And that involves a bit of visualization. And you're thinking about healing, and you're thinking about all the visualizing. You do the breath as well to get you started, but then you're thinking about visualizing all the creatures on the planet and nature, and trying to, you visualize yourself from an earlier point in your life when you're not doing so well, and try and give yourself a mental hug. You visualize people that you find it difficult to work with or to get on with, and you try to be loving to them. Now, by doing little meditations where you integrate that kind of visualization, that keeps it alive. It doesn't make it, do you know what I mean? It keeps it real. It stops it from getting, sort of numb where I'm cut off from everything. Do you know what I mean? So it's just, do you know what I mean? I'm just using that as an example because there's different types. So that's different types of guided meditation you can do if you get CDs or you go on YouTube or stuff like that, or get books that you can do that. And that you want to keep that balance. You know what I mean? So you don't get too sort of numbed.
Yeah. Right.
So there's different ways of doing it.
And, it's a funny thing about humans, we do have a tendency to want to numb ourselves, right? It feels nice. You numb the pain. It feels nice. Like, this is a thing that we do with drugs, with substances. It sounds like it's also a thing that, with meditation as well. It's like comforting to not have to feel all of it, because sometimes the feelings are too big to feel. So it's nice to kind of feel like you can turn them off. So that's not necessarily the point. It's like to feel the intensity of them, but to not get swept up in it.
Yeah.
So you started mindfulness 8 years ago. So 8 years ago was mindfulness. When did yoga and ballet come into that picture in your timeline?
Yoga was about 5 years ago, and ballet was about 3 years ago. So.
And you now teach mindfulness and yoga as part of your profession, as part of your work. That's right?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I still do a bit of ballet though.
Well, that's very common in the arts industry anyways.
Yeah. Still do a bit of
that. So would you, it's always interesting when I talk with adults who are getting started in these kinds of things. Interestingly, ballet has such a stigma around starting late, whereas yoga definitely doesn't, and mindfulness definitely doesn't. It's very normal to start yoga and mindfulness late and become really good at them and become professionals and become teachers. That's super normal to do that as an adult and become a teacher. But ballet doesn't really have that in it. So it's interesting to see almost the normalness of starting yoga as an adult, becoming a yoga teacher. That feels like a very normal trajectory, but starting ballet as an adult and becoming an adult ballet teacher is actually a little bit more complex, or like a little bit more of a thing. What do you think about that?
Well, that to me is like part of the reason, one of the benefits of doing a lot of mindfulness and yoga is that made me mentally strong and crave more of a challenge. And I wanted to do something that was, I wanted to do something that most people don't do. I was like, I want to do this, so I'm going to do it, and that's it. And whereas before I did mindfulness yoga, I wouldn't even considered it. So I think that's one of the benefits is of my practices, is that I'm going to just do whatever I think. Like, if I think I can do something, I'm just going to do it, and I'm going to enjoy the challenge. The challenge is, I'm up for the challenge of doing that, and I'm certainly up for challenging any stigmas. I haven't got any time for that at all. So that's a bonus to me, if I can challenge any sort of stigmas around guys doing ballet when they're older. I'll take that head on. I'll enjoy that.
It's definitely. There's also with men doing ballet, it's a whole other thing. I didn't even think to bring up that topic, but yes, to me it's just so normal because I'm just used to it, right? I'm so used to it, but actually for a lot of men coming into it, they may not be as used to it. I'm in the ballet world, right? So I see all the men like you and like the other people I interact with on Instagram and in the online studio. So I'm very used to it. But yeah, it is actually probably kind of intimidating to start ballet as a man. Is that true?
It wasn't for me because so much, but that was the mindset I'd had. But I think generally speaking, it is. I think there was some, some trepidation about doing it. But it wasn't like overpowering. It was just sort of like, it's a bit, but I don't care. I'm just gonna have a go. But I think for a lot of people it is, they haven't been doing sort of building their mental strength for 5 years previous to starting it like I had.
It's so true. The mental strength is key, and I hope more people will build it, because once you feel like you can take on challenges and once you trust yourself to take on challenges, I think the world is your oyster. That's like that's when I think you feel actually free in your body and in the world, when you feel like you can handle what the world throws at you.
I think freedom's a key word. You said that. I think that's part of the motivation, is to feel that freedom. Say, I'm just going to hell with it. I'm doing this because I want to do it. I'm not doing anything to please anyone else. I'm doing it for me, and I want
Yeah.
to do it, and that's it.
So what drew you to ballet originally? You said you liked it when you were younger. What about ballet, what qualities about it was mesmerizing to you?
Just watching the movement, the lines, and the discipline, and the way it's like the purest dance form. I could see other stuff, enjoy it, enjoy a bit of contemporary stuff, but I can remember seeing, like as a very young kid, uh, back in those days, they used to actually have it on terrestrial TV, which you don't. I mean, you don't even see it on Sky Arts now on some of the cable channels. So, but in those days, you did in the evening sometimes, and I just found it mesmerising as a child watching it. I thought, wow, it's incredible. In a way that other dance just didn't mesmerise me. It just, I can't explain it completely. It's just an emotional thing. It was just like, wow, that's brilliant. I'd love to be able to do that, and I could watch that for hours. I think it would have been back when I'm talking like 6 years old here, so I'm talking 80s, so I'm talking, probably when Fontaine and Nureyev were still appearing on terrestrial TV towards the end, or even in reruns, that era. So yeah, that's why.
It is very magical. And it's one of those things that almost looks like it defies gravity, right? The way dancers move and the way that they move at a different speed than normal things would move. It makes it have a very ethereal quality to it.
Mm. Yeah, totally. And it's one of those things where you just think, well, I didn't have the opportunity to do it when I was younger, so that's nagged away at me. Do you mean I'd love to have had a go to do that when I was younger? The opportunity never rose itself, and then I was off doing other things then, So I didn't have that opportunity when I was 9, 10, 8, 7, 12, 13. It just wasn't presented. It never presented itself to me. I didn't know enough about it, what I mean, to sort of say, oh, is there a class I could go to? When you're a kid, I don't really think like that. So yeah, making up for a lost youth.
Well, I guess as you said earlier, it doesn't matter how you came to it, right? Everything
Yeah.
kind of leads to it at the right time in our lives, and who knows, maybe you wouldn't be ready for it when you're young. I know I wouldn't have been.
I don't know. I'd have loved it when I was younger, but it just wasn't what boys did where I lived at that time.
Do you have goals? Do you have goals with ballet? I know you talked so much about the journey, but do you have like dreams or somewhere that you want to head with your ballet journey?
No, I categorically am totally. If you're talking about being mindful, I'm totally in the process. I'm. It's one of those things where I do with yoga and stuff. Like I'd like to be able to do this and get there. I'd like to go to this retreat. Um, I'd like to do my 300 hours, and I've got my 200 hours. But with ballet, it's just like no. I just want to enjoy it. I want to immerse myself and I want to enjoy it. I mean, sure, there might be. I want to get better, but I've decided I'm not going to set myself any goals. I'm just going to be totally. This is something I do that I enjoy, and that's what it is. It's not something that I do to try and make any money off, or I'm just doing it purely as a hobby. And at the moment, that's why I'm keeping it in my life. It's just something I enjoy doing.
That's fascinating that you have a very different viewpoint on those two different parts of your life. As you mentioned, you have specific yoga goals, you have specific things you want, but you keep ballet in like a separate cubby. It sounds like it was very deliberate. Why is that?
Because I didn't have something like I do a lot of running, but I'm always trying to beat my PB in running. So if I did a half marathon in an hour 26, I want to do it in an hour 25. Yoga, I'm always trying to do different workshops, learn new things. So I wanted to have something where, like I do a lot of writing, but then with my writing, I'm looking to self-publish some of those books on Kindle. So I wanted to have something which was sort of very pure as something I enjoyed, without any sort of anything that like not suddenly becoming a business or a job, just something totally pure as a pastime. Because that's what I probably didn't have in my life at that time. So it filled a nice hole. But that's for me, that's a personal thing. I'm not suggesting anyone else do that. That's just how it worked for me.
That's fascinating. I never thought about that, but I can see how the added pressure of making it into something can remove a little bit of the enjoyment of it, or the purity of the enjoyment, as you talked about, like the purity of the enjoyment. Yeah. So like, it's solely for me. It's for no one else. If I don't want to do it, I don't have to do it. It's because I love it. It's like for all of those really pure reasons.
That's it, exactly. Yeah. But, who knows? Maybe that'll change one day.
One day, maybe you'll catch a bigger bug. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe I'll be teaching in 10 years. I'll be this person who teaches. I don't know. Maybe I'll get to that level.
Maybe you'll be the first mindfulness and ballet teacher.
This is it. Don't put ideas. Don't encourage me. You take away the one pure hobby I've got.
Never mind. Forget I said it. So one last question. If you have any words of advice for anyone, whether they're male or female, just who want to get into the world of ballet, what's your last parting words for our listeners?
If you want to get into it, I'd just say feel the fear and do it anyway.
Feel the fear and do it anyway. So he said, feel the fear and do it anyway.
That's not me though. I stole that off a book title by a lady called Susan Jeffers, but I think that sums up what I think.
It's the definition of courage, right?
Yeah.
Feel the fear and do it anyways.
Yeah. I'm plugging her book here.
How about for the people who are in it, for people who are in the journey and are wavering on their motivation, what would you have for those people?
Enjoy the moment. Make the most of it. Enjoy the moment, because you only have that moment. You don't know what happens tomorrow. You might have an accident. You can't do ballet anymore. You don't know, do you? So make the most of it, because you don't know what the future holds. You can't change what's happened before. So make the most of that process of doing it. I'm doing what I enjoy, and that's the most important thing. And what happens afterwards, or what happened yesterday, it doesn't matter. What matters is the fact that I'm here doing what I love. What could be better than that? So make the most of each moment that you're doing it, and view it like that. Because think of all the other time you could spend doing something else, that you don't want to do. So you're doing this thing you enjoy. You've got that moment. That's the best place to be. That's the best place to be in your life.
It's so true. It's so true. I love it. Great parting words. We really have to take every single day, as we've learned this year. What we had in February, we took for granted, and now we know how much the world can change in a moment. So it's always true in our lives that the world can change in a moment. So enjoy what you got right now.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Tom. This was such a fun conversation. I learned a ton, and it was so fun to be able to hear your perspective on all these different aspects of the mind and the body and movement. Thank you so much for your time and perspective.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. I enjoyed it. Love talking to you.
Thanks for listening today, dancers. For more adult ballet, you can follow our studio on Instagram and Facebook at Broche Ballet. You can follow me on Instagram at Julie the Ballerina, or check out our blog and YouTube channels for more content. You can even dance with us in our online studio with daily live Zoom classes, private lessons, and our on-demand video library. Don't forget to have your story featured on our podcast. Email us at hello@brocheballet.com. I'm Julie Gill, and this was Broche Banter. Happy dancing!